Well, good morning, everybody. Here at Atlanta Highway and down at Beechwood. My name is Josh Bayne, and I get to be our college pastor here. And I'm just so happy to get to be here and continuing this conversation. And before we start, though, I do want to invite you, if you're a college student, to be at college nights. You already heard Dakota mention it. But our one and only college nights for the month of February is this upcoming Tuesday, like 2 days from now, over here at our Atlanta Highway location. And today's message in the Soulmate series, of the three, I mean, if you're here and you're not married, you're going to get so much out of this. I'm so glad you're here. But today, of the three, is kind of the more marriagey of the three. But man, if you're a college student, we are adding a special bonus edition to the series just for you, really anybody in that 18 to 25-year-old range, at college nights on Tuesday nights. In fact, it's all going to be live Q&A. We asked our college students to send in some questions, and they have sent in like 100 questions. I'm not going to read them all to you. But stuff like, how do I know I found the one? Is it okay to date someone who's not a Christian? How should we navigate our faith in the relationship? How do you deal with a breakup you didn't see coming? What are some ways to help from being tempted to go further, like physically? I love this. Should I date a guy I'm not physically attracted to, but he's a super sweet Christian guy? You got to come back Tuesday for the answer to that one. But the answer is probably, right, on behalf of other super sweet Christian guys out there with great personalities, you know? How to trust, don't you want to, it's going to be so fun. How to trust anyone after your trust is being broken. What does surrendering your love life to the Lord actually look like? I mean, you already heard Dakota testify to this, but she said it was actually at college nights that she was able to surrender her whole life to God. She was able to experience that sort of freedom and that sort of lightness. And so again, it doesn't really matter what your relationship status is. I really want you to be here. I'm going to just tell you straight up, we're not doing anything creative Tuesday night. We're just going to sing a bunch of worship songs, and we're going to get down to the truth. And it's going to be a lot of folks here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I want you to be here. But today, we're sort of picking up the conversation we left off last week. And last week, the only homework you really had was I want you to be a little kinder to your spouse, right, to your person, and a little more challenging to yourself. A little kinder to them, a little more challenging to yourself. You got to show them a little bit of mercy. You got to maybe bring the expectations down a little bit for them. I had a friend who texted me afterwards. He said, man, great word. I've been trying to get my wife to lower her expectations of me for years. I was like, well, it was not the total point, but I'm glad I could help with that, you know. But the big idea was this. We said, as far as I can see, the biggest problem in this relationship is who? It's me, right? I mean, it's way more fun to poke at all their stuff and dig into their sin and their issues and all their selfishness. And let's be honest, don't they have a lot of selfishness to deal with? But that doesn't really get us anywhere, right? The pointing fingers doesn't really work. And so we said maybe the best play, I mean, what would it look like? Imagine two people who are both exploring their own selfishness, who are just working on them. When in fact, we got a lot of selfishness in our own hearts, right? Now, I want to just start today by saying I think we have come by that selfishness honestly. In fact, all of us, regardless of how old you are, all of us grew up in a consumer culture. You tracking? So if you want Taco Bell at 2 a.m. at your apartment, there's an app for that. Be there immediately. You can have Taco Bell here by the time I'm done talking today if you want to. I've never seen anybody try that. It's up to you and God if you want to DoorDash at church, but you could do that, right? Or we live in this Amazon sort of world where you get whatever you want in 2 days, preferably one. The other day I was trying to order something and it said it was going to come in like a week. I was like, what is this, the 1900s? Like a week? You know what I mean? I thought we had a deal, you know? I pay extra for this. Or my parents pay extra for this, you know what I mean? And so we're just want to be honest in church. Anyways, if you work for Amazon, sorry, I think you understand how that goes. Anyways, and we live in this return sort of culture as well, right? I mean, this is my wife, no offense, but she goes to Target and she goes, well, I got a few things. I figured we could just return them. I got a house full of stuff we might return someday. I don't know if you feel the same way. You come over and check it out, but that's just sort of the consumer world we live in. I want it now. I don't want to wait. I mean, it's super weird. College students having to wait for marriage, having to wait to find their person. They never had to wait for anything, right? Isn't it true? And again, we can always just swap it out if it's not going. And so this kind of, consumer mindset has found its way into our dating and even into our dating apps. So we're going to talk about dating apps on Tuesday night for sure. A lot of questions about that, actually. But we go on these dating apps and you shop for a partner like you shop for a pair of joggers. Right? I mean, that one's a little too short. You know what I mean? I do want deep in the pockets, though, for sure. And you're trying to find somebody, right, that fits me. We're trying to find somebody that fits us. I mean, that's consumer language, and it's spilled into the way we think about commitment, and it's spilled over into the ways we think about compatibility. In fact, Rutgers University in New Jersey did a study not long ago called Why Men Won't Commit. Would you like to know the answer to why men won't commit? All right, the number one answer is they said women would give them sex without it. That's just a little free extra something. Anyways, for you to chew on, ladies. But that was true. Now, high on the list as well was the idea of soulmate. They hadn't really found their soulmate. And, if you missed last week, you got to go pick up on that. But like a reoccurring theme they kept coming back to over and over and over again was the men hadn't found someone they were compatible with. And their definition, as they began to ask the guys, what do you mean by compatible, right? They defined compatibility as a willingness, that someone showed a willingness to take them as they are and not change them. In fact, one guy said, if you are truly compatible, then you don't have to change. And that little murmur you hear is all the married people laughing under their breath, right? Because that's not how it works. But we got it all backwards. It's the difference, if you're taking notes, between consumer relationships and covenantal relationships. Write down consumer relationships versus covenantal relationships. The West, America, and nations like us have been so impacted by the marketplace, and I would argue technology, and it really started way back at the Enlightenment, that relationships in life, and Tim Keller's written a lot about this in the marriage book I mentioned last week, relationships that we used to view as covenantal, they now look a little bit more like consumer relationships. That the consumer world that we grew up in has sort of stolen our relationships too. So in a covenantal relationship, you sacrifice what you want for the other person. Right? You sacrifice some of your wants, needs, desires, whatever, for the relationship, for the marriage, for that other person. But in a consumer relationship, the relationship only lasts so long as your needs are being met. Specifically, so long as your needs are being met at a price that's agreeable to you, at a cost that works for you. If it starts costing too much or my needs aren't being met, then I'm out, right? And so the shift that's taking place in our culture, and again, this explains so much of the fights that we have. We'll keep getting into this later today. The shift just in America and in the West, as far as it comes to marriage, is this. Marriage used to be about us, but now marriage is about me. Too often marriage is about me and my happiness, and am I getting what I want, right? Is this fair? I mean, consumer relationships are really built around fairness. Some of you are in a marriage like this, or your marriage has been in a season like this. And I understand it's hard not to think in terms of like how much you're putting in versus how much you're getting out, or my favorite, how much you're putting in versus how much the other person's getting in. It's hard not to think in terms of fairness, but that's a consumer type of mindset, right? The marriage only lasts, or the relationship only lasts so long as my needs are being met at a cost that's acceptable to me. And we never do this with our kids, do we? We never do this with our kids. That's because no wonder so many, marriages, and fall apart after the kids leave the house. Kids leave the house, and it's like, what's going on? It's because we treat our kids like covenantal relationships, but we treat our marriages like consumer relationships. It only works so long as the cost is good, right? I'm getting what I need. Now, I'm going to tell you what you already know. You don't want a consumer relationship. You've tried it, right? There's no intimacy in a consumer relationship. It's all just kind of transactional, right? And so here's the shift we're trying to make. And it's possible for every single person here to make the shift. And again, if you're not married or you're a college student, I'm so glad you're here, because you can make the shift now. You can begin working on this now. But here's the shift we're trying to make. We're shifting from this marriage isn't benefiting me. Some of us showed up here last week and wanted to grow in your marriage, but that was really the mindset. This marriage isn't benefiting me. I'm not getting out of it what I used to get out of it. You don't want to be a consumer like that. And we're shifting to just beginning to contemplate or explore, or look for the ways that I'm not benefiting our marriage. What are the things that I do? What are the habits I've fallen into? What's some of my baggage in my past that's now worked its way into marriage, and not doing it on purpose? I mean, I love this person, but I got to look for the ways that I'm not benefiting the marriage. We're taking a shift away from consumerism. We talked about this last week, but in a consumer relationship, your happiness is dependent on the other person. We said if you make the other person a problem, now you've made them the solution. And so many of us are in these relationships, whether it's romantic or wherever, we're going, I can't be happy until fill in the blank. I'm not going to be happy unless they whatever. Well, that's sort of an example of a consumer relationship, because in a covenantal relationship, the win and success is not even about how much love that you get. It's really all about how much love that you give. And here's why I'm so excited to hear today, especially if your marriage is in conflict. I want to just talk to you for a second. If you're here, or crisis, if you're here and you feel like your marriage is in crisis, I know the temptation is that you just need to get a new one. That's what the enemy would tell you. You just got to trade this person in. You made a wrong choice, whatever. You didn't know better. Or, it's just too hard, right? You think about all the stuff to overcome and how hard that's going to be. But, that's a lie. That's a lie. You don't need a new marriage. I came to tell somebody you just need a different type of marriage. You don't need a new relationship, right? Because you'll just do that one like you're doing this one. You need a different type of relationship. Some friends of mine, I would call this marriage 2.0. In fact, if you're taking notes, that's the title of today's message. It's marriage 2.0, right? You don't need to divorce that person. You just need to divorce the way that you've been doing marriage. You need to step away from a consumer relationship, and you need to explore what I would say is God's design for marriage, which is for it to be a little more like a covenant, which is a little more unconditional. And so our passage for today is going to be Ephesians 5. This is like one of the ultimate passages in the whole Bible about marriage. Ephesians chapter 5. Paul's going to give us the roadmap. Now, if you grew up in church, you probably heard Jesus' big famous commandment. 3 words, starts with an L. Anybody? Love one another. Right, yeah, love one another. In fact, John 13, he says, a new command I give you. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And so as Christians, that's sort of our MO. It's what we try to do. But we mentioned last week, not a lot of us are taught how to do this, especially in terms of relationships, in terms of romantic love. What does it mean to love one another, especially, his new command, as Christ has loved us? What does it look like to follow that example? And so Paul gives, in a couple places we'll see today, kind of the playbook on how to do this. And he's going to, again, if you're in marriage conflict, you can't figure out how to stop the finger pointing and all the fighting, he's going to give you how to do it. He's giving you the solution in 9 words that we're about to read here in Ephesians 5. And I just want to warn you, this is like the medicine that tastes bad going down, but in the end, it's actually what heals you. And so I've been praying really all week long that you would just have an open mind to hear these 9 words and not be, afraid of them or not be, too prideful about it, and just kind of hear what Paul's saying. So Ephesians 5, beginning in verse 21, these are the 9 words. This is what he says. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now, I want to just point out the obvious. Nobody likes to submit to anybody, okay? Men don't like to submit to women. Women don't like to submit to men. You think about it at work. Men don't like submitting to other men. You think about it in friendships. Women definitely don't like submitting to other women. Nobody likes submitting to anybody. So that's just sort of the first thing I want to say. But Paul's going, this is the key to making the whole thing work. This is the key to a covenantal relationship. If you want to get out of a consumer relationship, because now you're realizing, oh man, that doesn't work. This is how you do it. This is the key. Now, in the Greek, that word submit is hupotasso. Hupotasso, it's a military term. You think about the different ranks of the military. It's a hupotasso. It's to sort of I just like saying it, hupotasso. But it's fun to sort of the idea is to put yourself kind of beneath the other person. It means to defer. Guys, you think about it in football. When you win the coin toss, what do you almost always want to do? Defer, because it's going to go good for you later, right? And that's sort of Paul's idea is to defer. To submit means to go, I'm going to defer to you. I'm going to prioritize your desires over my desires. I'm placing their desires ahead of yours. Now again, this word or this idea of submission is scary and loaded. I totally get that. I hope you know this is a safe place to always come. We're never going to beat you up in the message or anything like that, make you feel bad about yourself. But this word submission is loaded from a lot of different religious reasons and all that. But I just want to show you, this is a 2-part word. This will hopefully help somebody so much. 2-part word, submission. And here's all it means. It means taking your desires, placing your desire, whatever you want. When you get in those fights and, oh my gosh, they want this, I want this. It's placing that desire, watch it, sub to the mission. That's what submission means, right? It's placing your desires beneath the mission. What's the mission? I mean, some days it's just staying married, right? That's the goal today, right? Or it's the marriage. It's the other person's happiness, right? I'm trying to die to them. I want to place them, die to myself so I can serve them. So submission is placing your desire, whatever that thing that you want, sub to the mission. The way I was thinking we'd spend the weekend, the way I was thinking we'd spend, the bonus, the way I was thinking we'd do whatever tonight. It's not that those things don't matter, but it's just placing them sub to the mission. Does that make sense? It's placing me below we. We have all been a part of or seen relationships where people put me ahead of we. That doesn't go good. Now, he's going to get specific here to a couple different parties, beginning of verse 22, where he says this, wives, submit to your husbands. I figured that'd be a good stopping place for today. You know what I mean? So let's just pray. God, I pray you'd help the wives submit to their, no. I mean, but come on, why? Wives, submit to your husbands. Why? Because he's awesome? Because he's exceeded all of your expectations and you had these great dreams for him on your wedding day, but somehow he's even exceeded those? That's not what you're laughing because, it's like the opposite of that. That would never be the motivation, right? Well, that's good news. That's not what he says. He says submit to your husbands, not because they're awesome. Submit to your husbands. Look at this. As to the Lord. Like you were worshiping God through it. Like it was God asking you to do it. Like it was God who deserves it. In a sense, he's going, look, women, girls, ladies, do you treat your husbands any differently than your non-Christian friends treat their husbands? Same for guys. Guys, do you treat your wives any differently than your non-Christian friends treat their wives? He's going, come on, shouldn't there be a difference, right? As to the Lord. Again, I'm not saying they deserve it. In fact, we did a little research. The percentage of men who actually deserve it, look at this, a whopping 0%. The Bible says there is none righteous, no, not one. So it's a different motivation. You're not responding to their love, right? He loves me, so now I love him back. That's not what it says. You're not relying on his love. You don't want to rely on his love. It's not like I need his love, and so now I have the fuel that I need to love him back. No, it's as to the Lord. It's as though you're responding to God's love for you, as if God deserves it. It's as though you're relying on God's love for you. Like God's the one filling you up that then allows you to give back to your husband, again, who's in that 0% category. Now, verse 25, he talks to us. He says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. I love this. And gave himself up for her. Guys, come on, implication. When's the last time you gave something up for your wife? When's the last time you gave something up for her? I mean, come on. There's almost nothing that a woman wants more than for you to give something up for her. Do you know what that communicates to her? Am I right? It's true. And here's the tension. Like the guys are in the room going, but I love my wife. But I love my wife. Well, but how do you translate that to her? How does she know? The way that she knows is by you giving up some other things for her to show her that she's first. I'm learning this right now. Verse 25, give it up for them, right? Now on the surface, it's like, who wants to do this? Hupotasso sounds fun, but it really stinks when you think about just dying to yourself and your desires. And like, again, we're so in this consumer mindset, it's hard not to think of what's in it for me. Like why would I want to do this? How does this make sense? But you got to let Paul finish his logic. Paul's so smart, smarter than us, definitely smarter than me. And his logic makes sense. This is what he says in verse 28. Keep going. He says, in the same way, right, in the same way that Christ died for the church, is what he said, husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. And think about how much you Google, right, just about stuff to take care of your own bodies, guys, right? He's going, you got to think about her that much too. He who loves his wife, this is amazing, this is a cheat code. He who loves his wife loves himself. Somebody, as a husband, need to just memorize that verse. He who loves his wife loves himself. That's a cheat code. He's going, look, if you take your wife coffee to her office, it's going to go well for you later that night. Trust me. He who loves his wife loves himself. Or you choose her, you win too. Now, if you choose yourself, nobody wins. We've tried that. We've all tried that, right? You choose yourself, it's like, oh my gosh, nobody wins. So Paul's one of his big insights from all this is this, that if you want happiness, if you're going, I'm not happy in this relationship, I can't figure out how to get there. If you want happiness, pursue their happiness. Now, when you were dating, this is what you just did it naturally. This is all you did, right? She loved running, and she asked you to want to go run, and she was like, do you run? And you're like, in your head, you're like, I've never run in my life. But you ran 2 miles for that day and about died, right? But you just lied because you're like, she loves running, and I'll make her happy. Or there's some college girls doing this now. The guy, he loves football. You're trying to keep up because his interests. You're going, who's playing Super Bowl tonight? I mean, is it Steph Curry or the Yankees? Like, you don't really know, like, what's going on tonight in the Super Bowl, but you're trying. Like, in dating, this is the natural thing to do, is just sort of pursue their happiness. And Paul's going, look, you got to get back in that flow again. You got to begin pursuing their interests, their happiness, and do it happily. In fact, whenever there's like I want to do this and they want to do this, there's really only 3 options. Option number 1 to be this. If they want to do this, you want to do this. You can stubbornly insist your own way. In fact, any stubborn people in the room want to just, anybody married to another, that's a whole recipe. Yeah, for a thing. But some of you know, you can stubbornly dig your heels in and you can insist. And if you play that stubborn game long enough, you will eventually get what you want. Or maybe my favorite, the second option would be you can defer, but just with resentment. So the whole time you're like, this is stupid. I hate coming here. And every time we come to Hobby Lobby, I hate just, whatever. You just sort, all day you're so grumpy. And your friends are so stupid. Why don't we go to their husbands? Again, you got to go to Hobby Lobby and do the whole deal, but you're doing the whole thing with resentment. Or option 3 is you can defer with joy. But think through the options. When you stubbornly insist on your way, is anybody happy at the end of the day? Neither one of you are. When you defer, but you go all grumpy, you know what I mean? Or you go Eeyore, it's fine, whatever you want. Yeah. When you defer, but you're resentful the whole time, she's not happy, you're not happy. Neither one of you are happy. But if you can learn, it's amazing. Make the choice, and then honestly, the feelings will follow. If you can learn to defer with joy, both of you are happy, right? And it sends a great message. If you don't choose them, by the way, that sends a whole other message. We're going to talk about that next week, the message that sends. But here's what's interesting to me, and why I'm so fascinated by this, and one of 1,000 reasons why I believe Christianity is true. Why is this principle true? Why is it? Because it's not true, in every single relationship, but why is it true in marriage? Why is it true in marriage that when a spouse pursues the happiness of the other person, they're happy too? And if they don't pursue it, then nobody's happy. Why is that true? Well, he tells us in verse 31. He says, for this reason, or in other words, this is sort of the reason, one of the reasons. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. He's going, look, the reason this principle is true is you're not separate anymore. So if you love her, you're going to love you too. If you're hurtful to them, you're going to be hurtful to yourself too. It's sort of one big bank account in the sense that you're putting it into, right? And this is why I would say you have a lot more control over your relationship situation than you do. Even if that other person's not sowing seeds of love back to you. Whoever loves his wife loves himself. When the two become one, any deposit you make into the relationship is naturally, in a sense, this is sort of a bonus, is going to fill you up at the same time. And then he says, verse 32, this is a profound mystery, but this is amazing. If you really let this get into your heart, this will explode your heart. But I'm talking about Christ in the church. He's going, wait, who left their father to be united to somebody else? It was Jesus. I mean, nobody in the Old Testament, knew this was coming. Paul was the first person to say that Jesus was the example for marriage, and Paul was the first person to say that marriage is actually an example of the kind of relationship, sort of closeness and sacrifice, self-sacrifice that Jesus has displayed for people. That's crazy. I mean, again, you got to go back and read that in your own time. This whole thing from Paul is essentially a setup to go, this is how God loves you. This is how much God is holding back from you. 0%. But he does say, you can learn something from this too. In fact, that's how he closes in verse 33. He says, however, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And ultimately, this, but women just want to be loved. They do. They just want you to put them first. They just want you to choose them over other things. Men just want respect. We just want you to talk good about us. We just want you to sort of be glad when we walk into the room. That's sort of how we feel respected. That's ultimately what we want. We need that. I would say our kids need that too. We could do a whole talk or series on this, but one thing this verse teaches us is that men, fathers specifically, fathers teach us how to love. And mothers teach us how to respect. Like our sons and daughters are looking to us as the example, looking to fathers, looking to husbands to teach us how to love. They're looking to the wives to teach them how to respect, right? And the way we do it, the way they learn it, the way the other person on the other side of the relationship feels it is through sacrifice. When you take that desire that matters and is valuable, but when you take the thing that you desire, and you place that beneath theirs, Now, I want to begin landing the plane today by getting even more practical. I mentioned a couple different places in Scripture where Paul has written about this. So if you go one chapter or one book in the Bible over, just probably a couple pages from you if you have your physical Bible here at home, wherever you're watching this, go to the book of Philippians. Philippians is the next book of the Bible. Go to chapter 2 of Philippians. There's another passage I want to look at very quickly in our final few minutes where Paul is teaching us and teaching the church of Philippi how to imitate Christ in our relationships. Again, if the goal is, as I have loved you, love one another, then as Christians, again, in a Christian marriage, our whole goal is to follow his leading, to imitate Christ. And so this is what he says, and we're going to look at just a few verses and then be done. But verse 3 of Philippians 2, he starts out this way. He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. We all know what it means to do things out of, selfishness. That's what we're trying to work on. What does vain conceit mean in marriage? Look, when you first started dating this other person, you thought they were the world. You thought they were honestly, you thought they were better than you, and you were like, how did I get this person? But if we're honest, at certain times, in certain ways in marriage, you can begin in some ways to feel like you're better than that other person. He's going, if you think you're better than your partner, this is never going to work. Like if you think your desires matter more than theirs, or if you've sort of tricked your brain to thinking, making all the reasons why your needs are more important than theirs, it's not going to work. So you got to get rid of vain conceit. It's vain because it's fake. It's vain because it's not real. He's going, don't do anything. Don't do anything. Don't say anything that might even imply that you think you're somehow better than them. Next verse, he says, rather, in humility, taking that sort of lower place, value others above yourselves. Do the opposite. You got to go back to that place where you're thinking, oh my gosh, how did I get married to them? I'm going to at least treat them. I'm submitting to them, as we learned, out of reverence for Christ. You're valuing them above yourself, which raises the question, what do you value? Men, what do you value? Work, sports, savings, I don't know. Women, what do you value? As in, tell us. We have no idea. Please let us know. No, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. He's going, look, value them over that. That's how you defer. That's how you submit. You just value them over that. You want to love her? You want to, show her that you love her? Value her over your work. Do you want to show her that you love her? Value her over your savings. Value her over sports. Do you want to show him that you love him? Value him over your kids. Value him over your friends and what they're saying. That's how you respect him. That's how you submit to him. You value them over that. You place whatever that thing is sub to the mission. You're going, but I like those things. I like sports. I like my friends. You still get to have them. But here's how you get to have them. This is the model. Verse 4. Not looking to your own interests. In other words, it's not your job to necessarily to always be looking. Think about that. Think how countercultural that is, by the way. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the other. So if I'm going, this is what I want, and she's going, this is what I want, that's never going to work. But if I'm going, what do you want? And she's going, what do you want? No, what do you want? What do you want? That works. That's covenantal. Consumer is, here's what I want. I'm going to tell you what I want. Covenantal is each of you looking to the interests of the others. So I'll tell you something really practical that we do. If you're taking notes, you got to write this down. I don't know where we learned this, but we stumbled into this many years ago, probably in counseling, actually, I bet is where we learned it. But this phrase, we ask each other this question all the time. We say, what are your desires for blank? I love this. We're doing premarital counseling right now with some folks, and this is one of the first things we said. We said, you got to ask this question all the time. What are your desires for tonight? This is how you learn what they want, what they need. You ask your spouse, what are your desires? Ask your fiance for this weekend. What are your desires for the vacation? Hey, New Year, what are your desires financially? It's never crazy, but it gives us a chance to hear the other person. So she'll go, what are your desires for the weekend? And I'll go, honestly, Georgia plays at 6. I love to just watch the Georgia basketball game. Right? Or, man, I don't know how we're going to work it out, but it'd be amazing if I could just go to the gym. Like just real quick, I'll take the kids, whatever. And I ask her, what are your desires for this weekend? And she'll go, I want to have some people over. You're talking out. What are your desires for the vacation? Well, honestly, I just want to go eat at the back porch. I love that place. The crab cakes are incredible. And if we can I'll just be happy. I don't care what we do the rest of the vacation. And she'll go, I think I'd be happy if we just went out for a walk on the beach. Well, amazing. Let's do both. But you know why this matters? For so many of us, you have been expecting your spouse to fulfill a desire that you never told them about. And that's not fair, right? Give them a shot. Guys, take the lead on this. Ask the question first. Here's another thing you could do. If you're looking for a bonus, have them fill in this blank for you. If you did blank for me every week, things would be different in our marriage. Don't demand this. Josh said, if you would do this for me, things would be different. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying go set some time apart and ask them, fill in this blank for me, or text them later. It's weird when spouses have to do that. Sometimes we have to do that. Hey, what was your blank? What can I do that would be, if I started doing that every week, things would be different in our marriage. And don't get defensive, right? Just sort of listen, try to do it, right? Try to put your other desires beneath that. I bet there's a way to do both. You pursue each other, right? And then he concludes like this, verse 5. He says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, because this is a mindset and you can choose it. Have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, didn't play the God card, didn't consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, didn't choose his rights over the relationship, didn't choose what he was rightfully owed, but instead pursued relationship a different way. When he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, this is what he did. He humbled himself by being obedient to death, to sacrifice, to loss, even death on a cross. And I know what you're thinking. Again, especially if your marriage is in crisis, you're going, if I do this, if I put the other person first, if I don't look out, come on, everybody in my life, everybody in your life has been telling you to look out for yourself. Not the scriptures. The scriptures say not looking to your own interest. You're going, if I do that, honestly, I'm just afraid. I'm afraid they're going to take advantage of me. I'm afraid just to be that out of control. I'm afraid that they're not going to reciprocate. I'm afraid I'm going to get my hopes up. And look, I know. And that's why you got to come back next week. Because next week is the most important part of the whole series. The part I'm looking forward to the most. The entire series is incomplete without next week. And so if you're here and you have to be out of town, you got to get caught up. But I would urge you to maybe consider bending your plans so you can be here next Sunday. And here's why. Because there is a huge enemy to this type of relationship. And it's not what you think. And it is the culprit for, I have found 90+% of conflict in our relationships. And next week, I'm going to tell you what it is. So let me pray for you, and we'll be on our way. Oh, God, this is, in our minds, we're like, that works. This works. We trust that this works. But in practice, it's really hard to do this. It feels like the death that we just read about in that flip. It feels like dying to ourselves. And so we're going to, again, need your help. But many of us are that desperate that we have turned to you for help. And so for anybody who is desperate enough to have turned to you for help, flood them with help, with mercy, with the humility that they need to actually try this. And I pray they would get some rewards on it like soon. I pray they would test you in this, trust you in this, and see it go well. Honestly, even just the felt experience of you being enough for them, even if they're not getting it back from anybody else right now. I pray you would give them that gift. Your word talks about how you are complete in our weakness, that your strength is made perfect in that place. And so I pray they would experience all that in Jesus' name. Amen.